I'm not,
Jay, why don't you tell
being
us your views?
sarcastic. Not being
No,
sarcastic.
we don't care about my views. They've heard them. Why don't you tell us your views?
Well, atheism is fake news because in atheism, they're presupposing that there is nothing. I think all atheists are actually agnostic because they cannot claim to know anything, because to claim to know an absolute would be to claim to know all knowledge. And if you claim all knowledge, you're claiming divinity. If you claim divinity, now you look like a crazy person because you're claiming divinity, but you're an atheist. How the fuck does that work? Don't know.
Wait, could you go back to the first step there?
Yeah, sure. The first step, atheism is presupposing that there is nothing. So they have a presupp an argument that there is nothing. They claim to know there is absolute nothing.
What is nothing?
That's the whole point of atheism, that there is no such thing as theism. They claim no such thing as atheism. There is nothing. It's not. There is no atheism. Opposite atheism, no atheism. So they have a presupp of no atheism. So in their own argument, they have to have a presupp.
You okay, buddy?
Because you have to claim. You have to claim there is nothing.
Atheism?
Yeah, that's the whole point. There's an atheism. Atheism is saying there is no theism. You guys misheard, I guess.
King Bear, I need you to cough in the mic if you need us to come rescue you.
No. Theism? You guys know what theism? Okay, okay, so if someone claims theism exists, they use a presupp that there is theism. To claim there is no theism, you use the presupp that there is no such thing as theism. I'm saying that you can't be atheistic because you would have to prove to me that theism does not exist without a doubt. And then if I put that burden of proof on you, the only thing you do back is put burden of proof on me. We put burden of proof on each other, which is what a skeptic does. A skeptic would be agnostic, meaning unknowing of full truth. Agnostic means has not experienced, does not know of, does not have knowledge of. That's what agnostic means.
No, nobody thinks theism doesn't exist.
So what is an atheist?
Someone who thinks God doesn't exist.
Okay, so Zeus exists. Is that a problem?
Zeus exists? Is that a problem?
Yes.
What problem would it be?
That's not a problem for atheism. Zeus existing, one of my deities that I believe in.
Well, it depends what somebody's denying when they deny God. I mean, if Zeus, Zeus is basically a Marvel superhero, then that can exist.
Right. So I believe Zeus exists. He is my god.
Okay, but Zeus is basically a Marvel superhero, right? That's not what people are usually denying.
So your argument is that basically a fictional character that's written in comics, so you're like dismissing it, but still you're okay with my premise that Zeus is my god?
No, I don't take atheism to be the denial that a being like Zeus exists.
Okay. So you think atheism is just against the Christian, Catholic, Jewish, Muslim God?
Well, yeah, against a being that answers to like the cosmological, ontological, moral arguments.
Well, Zeus can do all those. Zeus can do that. Zeus can do that. He's the god of gods.
Well, but Zeus is not the object of the ontological argument, right? Zeus didn't create everything.
You're right. His father Kronos did.
So, like, Zeus isn't the kind of thing that is specifically being denied.
Right. So, but if you agree with Zeus, you agree with the presupp his father being Kronos, and Kronos created time and space. So you're okay with Zeus existing with the presupp.
Well, I didn't say it was okay. Like, I don't think Zeus exists, but I don't take atheism to be the denial that Zeus exists.
Okay. So, like I said, you just deny one specific god?
A category of gods, yeah.
That does not include Zeus.
No, because I think Zeus is basically a Marvel superhero.
What you think of him and what I think of him will be different things subjectively, but you don't have an argument against it.
Well, I mean, my opinion on Zeus is going to be the same as my opinion on Bigfoot or aliens, right? Like, if Bigfoot or aliens existed, well, specifically, like if Bigfoot existed, I would expect to see XYZ. I don't see XYZ. That's not a knockdown argument against the existence of Bigfoot, but it is reason to like not think it exists.
To have skepticism about it, to doubt it. I think that's my argument. I think we agree. Yeah, we agree.
About Zeus, okay.
No, about things in general. You said aliens, Bigfoot, Zeus, things. If it causes you to have doubt and skepticism of it, but not have a full explanation of why it does not exist, but you can say, I don't think it exists because of XYZ, like you said, like you put out. You had great words to say about it. I liked it. I think we agree.
Yeah, Zeus, aliens, and Bigfoot. Yeah, I'm skeptical of them.
Yeah.
But this doesn't have anything to do with your original train of thought, something about like absolute skepticism.
Right. So this is the whole deal. If you're only against one specific thing, that's a belief. You believe you're against one specific thing, by the way, you said so in your own words. Because you believe you're against one specific thing, I'm never going to budge on you. I'm never going to have an argument. You're too dogmatic about that one specific thing. So go ahead, believe that one specific thing does not exist. That is okay. Those are using your own words. I'm okay with that.
But what's the one specific thing he doesn't believe in?
Define that. Yeah. Define the...
Good rule of thumb is don't try to understand. Don't work harder to understand someone than they are to be understood. So I lost faith in this conversation about 5 minutes ago.
That's okay, Benjamin. If you didn't want to follow, you didn't have to follow.
He had a better showing. He was in my room, I think 2 days ago. I liked his contribution then. He seemed more genuine.
Me? I wasn't in your room 2 days ago.
No polar bear. So,
now the argument can go in if you want. Define the God that you oppose and make a definitive claim against the God you oppose. If you're an atheist.
No, I mean, yeah, like I deny the object of the cosmological, ontological, and moral arguments. I don't think there's a necessary being. I don't think there's a being that had to create everything. And I don't think there's some moral authority sitting outside space and time.
Do you want to ask him questions, King Bear, or do you want me to ask him?
You can go from there. You seem more interested in it right now. Right now, because you were...
Well, yeah, I got a small breath of energy. I'm sure I'll be done momentarily. But no, like I'm just curious metaphysically, like because and I don't think it's any type of like knockdown argument or anything, but like what comes up at least with some of these arguments is like a principle that theists will refer to is that something cannot come from nothing, and I think that's like part of like what we're trying to understand. Like, do you agree with that, or do you think that's not violated because the universe always existed, or like what are your thoughts about that?
So I don't know if the universe is. I don't know if like existence has always existed or not. But something coming from nothing, if that means nothing causing something, I don't believe in that. But I have no problem with the idea of an event taking place in the absence of a sufficient reason. Like I don't believe in the principle of sufficient reason. So I think things can happen for no reason.
Okay, let's put a pin in that, but let's just stick with the original thing. You don't think nothing can cause something, right?
Right, nothing has no causal powers.
Okay. So would you agree then that the universe, if we're using universe synonymously with like creation, would you agree then that there could not have been a state of nothing as the starting point of the universe or creation, because then that would result in what you just said could not happen, which is something leading to, which is nothing leading to something.
I think there can be nothing, then something.
I have a question about your phrasing, Alaska.
Yeah.
Like when you say state, because obviously we talk about nothing, it's like a lot of intuitions kind of break down. But when you say a state of nothing, could I rephrase that into a state of nothing is something that doesn't exist in like space and time. Like if I just said,
yeah, it's the
like,
lack of any existence. It's just so like nothing exists, no thing exists, and therefore.
And then can you put it back into your original question? You said it. You asked.
Yeah. So maybe I misunderstood him, but I thought he was saying that you cannot have a state of nothing that leads to anything else but the state of nothingness. Is that not correct?
If leads to means cause, then no.
I don't mean cause. I mean if you have nothing, it will never change into anything else. Period. I'm not talking about causes, explanations, or anything else.
No, I think there can be nothing then something.
Okay, and can you explain what you mean by that?
What I mean by it?
Because I don't understand that statement with your earlier statement.
Yeah, he's asking you, how does, when you say there can be nothing then something, what is the link between nothing and something in that statement that you're making?
Oh, the link would be like temporal, right? Just a tensed statement. First nothing, then something.
Gotcha. So it's not that they have any causal relationship. It's just that at some point, maybe one way of phrasing it would be, at some point, a configuration of matter didn't exist, in which case, there was a nothing, right? And then that configuration of matter came into existence and it occupied that state, and now it's not nothing anymore, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, when you mean something causes something else, what do you mean by that?
I guess, basically either it would act as a sufficient condition for the other thing, or or it's something that would appear in a regular pattern, right? Like events in a regular pattern, or events according to a natural law, natural regularity.
Yeah, and my provisional definition, only because me and Discernible are probably on the same team here. My provisional definition is a reconfiguration of matter. So a chair that I may be sitting on, when I say that it began to exist or it was caused to exist, I mean that there were pre-existing parts that were fashioned together to manifest into the chair.
Wait, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, there. If I were to say I'm sitting on a chair and the chair began to exist, or the chair was caused to exist, I don't mean that. I don't mean that the chair came out of the ether of nothingness and manifested. I mean that the full potential of the chair was already existing in pre-existing material, and that pre-existing material was manipulated to become the chair. That's what I mean when I say a chair was caused to exist.
Oh, okay. So, but are you a neurological nihilist?
No, not that I know of. I'm not familiar enough with the term, but I don't think I
neurological. What is it called? It's like it's not nihilism. It's like neurological something.
Neurological nihilist?
Yes. That's what it was. That's what I was mixing up. What did I say? Neurological? What's up, TBC? Neurological.
What's going on, everybody?
Hey,
what's up?
Is my mic not working? Hello?
Yeah,
are you guys talking?
Mereological nihilist says there are no parts.
We can hear you, buddy.
Yeah, is that what, so Benjamin? Because I think exactly.
If you don't mind me asking, well, it seems there's a lull in the conversation.
There's
what are we talking about?
You're just interrupting.
My bad. Yeah, my bad. I didn't hear anything. My mic was messed up.
So, Benjamin, do you think that there's only composite objects?
And I might have somebody muted. Yeah, I do.
Do you think there's only composite objects?
Oh, you mean objects that have been fashioned together from pre-existing material?
Meaning, that. When we say there's a chair, are you saying that's illusory? That it's just the chair is just a collection of smaller parts of things. That's what's really there, and what we're saying is a chair is just a convention. in our minds.
I don't know if I'd be able to go that far.
Yeah.
I would say that there's a utility in calling something a chair because it's serving a certain purpose. But if I were to put that chair in the woods around a bunch of like deer, then functionally it would stop being a chair to the deer. They wouldn't sit on it. They'd probably use it in some other way. So
Yeah.
I think the linguistic term that we apply to it, that's going to be embedded in the social contract that we have with each other of how we use things. But I think that the linguistic part is the part that's made up. And I think that the being, the fact that the chair is occupying time and space and is what it is, irrespective of my word choice, that part I would call like transcendent from my perception.
Exactly. And that's what I think ultimately, like, the argument or the claim is about, because yes, like, words are arbitrary, and I think language is like described as like intersubjective or something like that, where it's not really purely subjective and it's not objective. So we have this like, like this agreed upon, we'll just agree that these terms mean certain things. But I think that's just like a limitation of like our like faculties and ability to communicate with each other. We could communicate telepathically or something, then we wouldn't have those limitations.
I'm curious for you, baked, and then for you, discernible. If nothing just means like the negation of what is, would it be accurate to say that nothing is constantly existing as a category of things that are not the case right now?
I might disagree with that.
That's like a. I know in cosmology this comes up all the time because there's this question, and there's no like consensus. Like, is it a valid question or is it a nonsensical question about the expansion of the universe, and is the universe expanding into nothing? Like, we can't conceptualize that because we can't. You would almost have to have like a 4-dimensional.
Yeah.
Right, like
I think the prepositions break down when you get to that point. Like when you were asking discernible, do you believe something can come from nothing? The grammar itself kind of assumes that nothing is this like depository of existence, like a void, right? And then from it leaves out of and then actualizes into something. And that's just not really what nothing is, right? The second that you think of nothing, it ceases to be nothing.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
But that may be the case, but that may be a limitation of our ability to.
Like, that's what I was about to say. Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. We can't understand true nothingness because we never experienced true nothingness. Mm-hmm. So how would you ever know of true nothingness?
Exactly.
I have a hard time with that statement because I would say that if nothing is a category of things that are not, then at some point the fashioning of cells that is called Benjamin, at some point that did not exist, right? The potential for its existence was found in other things, of course, like my dad's ball sack, but it had not fashioned itself into this autonomous human body called Benjamin. And in which case, the time before I was born, I was experiencing nothingness, right?
Well, in your analogy, using your analogy, would there ever be a point of zero potentiality? Would there ever be the zero potentiality point of nothing?
You mean like an ultimate like beginning or something of that nature?
Yes,
I can't. That part, that level of things, I can't even go that far. I don't know.
That's what because I think that's where they're headed. I think that's where they're headed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, let's go back to then. I want to let discernible be the token atheist. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, did an absolute nothing ever exist? I'm really not sure about that. I'm not sure if it's possible.
Okay. But
the reason that I phrased things the way that I did is I was just basically expressing my beef with the principle of sufficient reason, that everything has an explanation for its existence. And to say that something does not have an explanation for its existence is to say that it exists because of no thing, which you can just run together as a nothing.
Yeah, well, but I think it's even more than that because, like, the theists say that God exist by his own nature. So nothing caused him to exist, but we still think he exists because we have and this is obviously goes all the way back to Aristotle. Like, we don't understand, or at least I don't understand how you're conceptualizing things, because that's the whole first mover argument is based on the idea that like there is something, right? And putting aside the causal issue in terms of like the causal sequence of events and like, does that require a starting point? I'm just saying, like, metaphysically, seems like being would need to have a source, like physical being would have to come from somewhere. The alternative, it seems like you have to take the position that it's just eternal, because then it's like, then you could take the position like it's uncaused and then it always existed. But then that doesn't really solve, I don't think that solves the metaphysical question about, and it's not even like, I'm not sure if it's really a call for an explanation. I understand like framing it that way, because on one level, is a cause that much different than an explanation? Like, if you say event A caused event B, then event A is the explanation for event B. So I guess we'd have to drill down a little bit to distinguish, like, what is the distinction between an explanation and a cause? But because I guess something could be uncaused and still provide some explanation, like for some later event.
Yeah, but, sure. I mean, like, God is supposed to have his explanation within himself, right? Like, the explanation is his own existence.
Exactly. But in your view, the universe is self-existent, right? Because like there's no other alternative. It can't be that something caused it or brought it into being. It has to be that it just exists by its own nature, right?
Well, the universe, if we're referring to the set of things governed by our physics, I mean, that doesn't seem to be eternal. That seems to have begun 14 billion years ago.
Exactly. So, but I was even like putting that aside. Let's just assume it's eternal. I still think we still run into the same issue. Like, it would have to be self-existent. There would be no other alternative, because if it wasn't, then something caused it to exist. And then that would be then the natural, whatever caused it in your view, you would then have to explain naturalistically what caused that thing. Unless you just take the position that there's some physical thing out there that is uncaused that brought the universe like into being. And that's just, it's almost like incoherence what's being said anymore, like at that point, because it's like, what could that possibly be that you're referring to?
Well, no, I originally argued that things can
not
come
you,
into existence.
I don't mean you in particular, but wait, what's that?
I mean, I originally said that things can come into existence for no reason, without a cause.
And what's your support for that?
There's no contradiction in it. Nothing then something is not a contradiction.
But how is that different from the lack of potentiality in nothing producing something?
Well, because to say that nothing like caused something would have to ascribe causal powers to nothing. And I don't see what nothing would like. I don't know how to conceptualize nothing as having causal powers.
That is, but you already said no. But there's no distinction. But you're saying that something doesn't need a cause. That is nothing. That's nothing. Why are you distinguishing? On one hand, you're saying like it doesn't need a cause, but then when I'm like, so you're saying nothing can produce something, you're like, no, I don't want to say nothing can produce something.
Yeah, right. And I'm not saying that, right? Like nothing then something is not the same sentence as nothing produced something.
Yes, it is.
No, because there's the unknown element. Is that what you're talking about? The unknown between X, Y, the Y, basically. The X, Z, but the Y is...
There is no unknown element. There's nothing. And then somehow something appears.
Mm-hmm.
That is the equivalent of saying that nothing produced something. There's no logical distinction between those two scenarios.
I don't think so. Like temporally juxtaposing two things does not say one caused the other.
Then you would have to claim the why.
You're saying that nothing exists, and then you're saying something exists. So then if I were to what caused that thing to exist, you're saying there was no cause. Mm-hmm. That means nothing caused it. Literally, nothing caused it.
Yeah. So the way I would want to phrase it is that there was an absence of an antecedent sufficient condition.
Right. But when I ask you, are you comfortable with the statement that nothing caused something? You're saying, no, you're not comfortable with that anymore. Well, I don't understand.
Because it reifies nothing, right? It makes nothing into a thing that does stuff.
No, it doesn't. How is my nothing a something just because I'm saying that it produces something?
Because that phrase ascribes causal powers to it.
What is causing the existing thing to come into being in your scenario?
It comes into existence in the absence of a sufficient antecedent condition.
That means he doesn't know. That means there is no known.
No, it doesn't mean I don't know.
It means there's no known. There's no
he's not talking about. He's not talking about knowledge. He's saying that it lacks any explanation or sufficient cause.
Exactly.
That is what nothing is. Nothing is the lack of an explanation or a cause. If you lack explanation and you lack cause and you lack every other property that exists, you're nothing. There's no distinction between what you're describing and nothing. They're the same exact things.
So I can give you a distinction. I can give you a distinction.
I've been asking you to provide it, so please do.
Yeah, sure. So the reason, like, when I say that it comes from nothing, it's not the same thing as an absolute nothing, at least not necessarily. You can imagine, like, in your head, an empty room, okay? You can picture that pretty easily. And there's nothing in this room that can make a table. But now you can imagine a table appearing in that room, right?
No,
there's nothing in that room that had the ability to make that table. The table appeared in the absence of an antecedent sufficient condition.
No, you're changing the hypothetical. In my hypothetical that I presented to you, there was no room. There was nothing. And
right. I'm saying the table appeared for no reason, and you can say it appeared out of nothing.
No, in my hypothetical, nothing exists.
Right.
I wouldn't say that.
There's no room.
You just
there's no
take
universe.
mine.
There's no me or you. There's no thinking about anything. Nothing exists. And you're saying that a table can appear out of nothing. And I'm saying to you, that means nothing led or produced something. And you're saying, no, that's not correct. And then I'm asking you why, and you're saying, because all I'm saying is that there doesn't need to be a sufficient explanation.
Right. Nothing is not the sufficient explanation of it.
I'm not going to, you're referring to nothing as something. What you're doing
No,
is...
not.
Yes, you just did. You just said nothing is not a sufficient explanation, meaning that you're hypothesizing something as a potential explanation for something. And what I'm saying that you're saying that there doesn't need to be an explanation. And what I'm saying is that's what nothing is. Nothing is the lack of an explanation in addition to lacking every other possible property something can have. Therefore, when you lack all properties, you cannot distinguish the scenario A that lacks all properties and scenario B, which is just lacking explanation but no other property. You're not identifying any other property other than saying there's no explanation. In scenario B, there's no explanation.
So
is there anything else? Is there anything else that caused, or does anything else exist in scenario B that could produce the effect in scenario B?
So the thing that I'm using the word nothing to mean is just the absence of a sufficient condition.
No, that's not what nothing means.
Well, that's what I'm using it to mean, right? That's what I'm talking about here. The absence of a sufficient condition.
That's not what nothing means, and any person would never use the word nothing that way.
And if we talk about an absolute nothing can't be a sufficient condition for anything.
In philosophical conversations, in theological conversations, in everyday conversations, no one would use the word nothing in the way you described it. You're just making a random definition.
If there's an absolute nothingness, can that be a sufficient condition for something?
If you wanted, what I would suggest is just, if we're going to talk about something so abstract as nothing, but you're going to use this unusual definition that no person has ever heard of before, and then not explain that for like 15 or 20 minutes into the conversation.
Can absolute nothing be a sufficient condition for something?
I kind of feel like I wasted 20 minutes talking to you about this.
Well, Alaska, if you took this, the way he's using it is nothing means I don't know. Like, to me, that's what, when he says it, that's what it means.
That's
can
all
nothing be an absolute, can absolute nothingness be a sufficient condition?
Please don't do that. If you're going to have a conversation like this, don't use a word like nothing in this like sui generis, totally arbitrary, made up way that you're using.
Yeah.
Look, and then I only use the word nothing because that's the word everybody else uses, right? I'm talking about the absence of sufficient conditions.
You're obviously an intelligent person, and you know that like adults, there's like common understood language that we share amongst ourselves. And if you're using something in a way that is not commonly understood, you should explain it.
I'm happy to drop the word nothing and talk about the absence of a sufficient condition.
No one wants to talk about
absolute nothingness be a sufficient condition?
We don't want to talk about that.
I love how he adds the absolute to it. We don't speak in absolute. I mean, it's ingrained in our language to speak in absolutes, right? But we obviously don't mean it as in 100%.
So in Rage, we were talking about...
So can nothing be a sufficient condition for something?
We were talking about the absolute no potential, the nothing before the Big Bang. We were talking about like the quantifiable zero potential space is what we're talking about.
Well, here's a question for Baked and for King Bear is if you were hypothetically standing in that room with Discernible, and it was an empty room, and then a table just manifested into the room, and you watched it happen, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and if Discernible were to look at you two and say, "Hey, that table just like came from nothing," would he be using it correctly in your book?
No, he would not, because
I really want to add on to that.
Once you have like we're in a physical state of the universe, so we're in space-time. We cannot so there's no way of actually, even like the vacuum isn't empty; it's filled with virtual particles and energy. There is no nothing that exists. And so what ends up happening is like quantum mechanics will just say, if you wait long enough, it will appear. The horse will appear in your living room. That doesn't violate the laws of physics. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the conversation we're talking about.
No, but I want to go ahead and Rage wants to add on. Go ahead and Rage.
When you talked about the chair, right? It's there's like the material to make the chair pre-existed. You're not actually making anything, right? Well, actually, you are making something in the sense of, you know, you're applying a label to
material.
It. Yeah, but you understand where I'm coming from. Like, you didn't just spawn the chair out of nothing. You remixed materials.
Well, also in the analogy, it was imagine a table and then it appears. So
imagine that we're standing in the room in a table.
Imagination.
That will happen. That will happen in physics because the universe is filled with energy and matter, and there's no way of getting around that.
But that's saying the quantum field is a sufficient condition for a table appearing. I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is.
They have an analogy in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy of pushing the button and anything could happen. It's the probability drive. Anything could happen because you're the infinite. There's infinite possibilities and probabilities.
I just think that if I'm trying to be charitable here with Discernible, if I were in that room, this is a thought experiment, and that, you know, we both saw the same thing, a table manifesting from seemingly nothing.
Yeah, I like it.
Based on my experience of hearing the word nothing, if Discernible looked at me and said, "Holy shit, that table came from nothing," that to me would fit within the application of how I've always heard the word nothing used. So this
is good.
I get the problem with the word. I get the semantic problems with the word nothing. That's fine. Like, I don't mind dropping the word nothing. I mean absence of sufficient reason.
Let's expand your analogy real quick. So a table spawned. How do you know it came from nothing? How do you know that came from nothing?
Exactly.
Well, you wouldn't be able to know in any particular
How do you know that another...
Okay,
so this is great. It is.
The point is, it's not logically
nothing, because we're trying to get to nothing. It is necessary to know if it did come from something. So we could expand this analogy or metaphor, whatever you want to call it, the scenario hypothetical. We expand that to atheism and religion. How do you know that an outside being did not just then create that for you? And how do you know that came from nothing? How do you know?
No, my claim here is that it's logically possible.
I'm really confused here. Wait, go ahead.
Logically possible. Logically possible, anyone would have to concede because anything could be possible. But could be possible of anything doesn't mean that the trip is in the sum. It has to come from something. There's something. There has to be some probabilities. Something, two factors, two things that probabilistically collide to then make this phenomenon occur.
That begs the question for an infinite regression, right?
Infinite regression, I believe in that, but do they?
Oh, you do?
I don't know.
I have no idea because I was just reading a bunch of Reddit posts on it. It's like, well, it's impossible infinite regression, but then it like causality, right? So there has to be a cause and effect, but then that main cause has to be absolute, right? But then there's no such thing as absolutes. So it's I don't know.
It's kind of self-defeating, but it's self-defeating because of our parameters of knowledge. So who knows?
It's like our limitations. Like we can't
are we past
grasp
the
it.
semantic issue with nothing now? You know what I mean? I mean the absence of sufficient condition.
No, because he just explained this a few seconds ago. All that means when you boil it down is you don't know. That's literally it.
I don't know what. What is it you think I'm
How
claiming?
do you know there's an absence of the antecedent? How do you know that? How do you know that?
In some particular case, I wouldn't necessarily.
Exactly. So you don't know. So if we boiled down that when we got to the simplest root is I don't know. Your definition is
But
I don't know.
I'm not making that claim.
You just did.
No, I'm not making the claim that events have taken place without sufficient condition. I'm saying it's logically possible.
You're saying that nothing, we're looking at the definition of the word nothing. You're saying that nothing is insufficient antecedent. How do you know it's an insufficient antecedent? You just said, I don't know. I said, that's what happens when you boil down your definition.
Case,
I don't know. And if your definition boils down to I don't know, then you do not know what nothing is. Therefore, it goes back to Baker-Alaska point. I'm not done. It goes back to Baker-Alaska's point. Okay. That's great. Then it looks like you both agree.
There's no phenomenal difference between reason and no reason. Between explanation and no explanation, right? Because it could just be a mysterious explanation you have no access to. There's no phenomenal difference between the two.
To me, you just conceded because you admitted that in most cases you wouldn't know, or in some cases you wouldn't know, or maybe all cases you wouldn't know because you don't know. Therefore, you don't know. Tell me again the definition of
my claim is not that events without explanation have taken place, right? My claim is that events without explanation can take place, logically speaking.
But your definition of nothing is lacking antecedent.
How is that? I was just going to say, like, what? How do you know that's logical? Like, I don't. To me, it doesn't sound logical. There does seem to be a contradiction.
What's the contradiction?
Well, I mean, I would have to flesh that out a little bit, but it seems like I don't know if you could apply the laws of logic to the state of nothing and say, like, somehow the law of identity applies to the state of nothing.
I thought we didn't want to use the word nothing anymore.
Well, trying to nail down your definition to get to the
I don't
finality.
think there's a distinction. Like, okay, there's two different scenarios. One is like you have a physical state, and then things may happen, and then you may or someone could take the position like within that physical state, things could happen without explanation. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about like what we're trying to understand. Like, is there an explanation for the physical state itself? Like, can there just be a physical state that exists without any explanation at all?
No,
the answer is not necessarily.
Which you know what that means? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, right? That's an a posteriori question.
But whenever you say not necessarily, that boils down to I don't know. That literally boils down to I don't know. It means maybe, sometimes, possibly, could be. I don't know.
My claim isn't that any particular thing, right, happened for no reason. My claim is that it's logically possible, and that is a claim of knowledge. I'm not saying I don't know.
Okay, so you're saying it's logically possible that a physical state exists without any explanation.
Yes.
That's what you're saying? That's ultimately what your claim is?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I guess, do you think that logical possibility is sufficient for something to exist?
No, otherwise everything logically possible would exist.
Okay. So establishing the logical possibility of what you just set forth doesn't do anything for establish. I mean, it does something. Establish that it's logically possible for that thing to exist, but it doesn't establish that it exists, right? It's not an argument that it exists.
Of course.
Okay. So what is your argument for existence?
My argument for existence? No,
Yeah.
my point in all this is to say there's no logically necessary being.
You're saying, so you've established that we could have a physical state without an explanation for that physical state, that it's logically possible for that to be the state of affairs, right?
Right, and the point of that is that the first premise of the cosmological argument is false.
That everything that begins to exist has a cause?
Right.
No. That's not true. It could be false, is what you mean to say. It could be, because you're using could be. This could happen. So right. It could be.
That's
true. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if somebody's okay, but the cosmological argument needs its first premise to be absolute.
So this isn't a claim. This isn't a claim or critique. This is just a things are possible, so they're possible. Things could be possible, so they're possible.
The cosmological argument needs its first premise to be an absolute.
So why are you talking about the cosmological?
But it could be an absolute, and you're saying it could be an absolute by saying it could not be an absolute. It also could maybe not.
Talking about the cosmological argument, which is about a cause. You said your entire thing is not about a cause; it's about an explanation.
Well, you said earlier that they're not entirely separate things, right? Like explanation is just why something is the way it is, or why it exists.
So you're adopting my position now on that?
I never had a problem with explanation and cause being used the same way.
So now you're saying they are the same, right? So now you're saying that the physical state is uncaused.
It can be, yes.
Okay, but you don't have any way of possibly establishing that. You're just asserting that, like in an ad hoc way. You have no.
Wait, I'm asserting that it's logically possible.
Based on what?
The lack of contradiction.
Well, how are you making the claim that there isn't a contradiction?
How am I making a claim there isn't a contradiction? Because, like all things being equal, contradiction obtains between two claims.
Nothing
that something is one claim.
Everything that exists, exists requires an explanation. So there's a contradiction that you're saying that something exists without an explanation.
Something can exist without an explanation, yes.
No, but my metaphysical principle is that nothing can exist without an explanation.
Yeah, and how would you establish that as being absolutely
true? It depends on who applies that explanation, right?
It's a metaphysical explanation. I can't provide empirical.
Even William Lane Craig says it's an intuition.
Wait, how come when I ask you to provide an explanation, you're saying like you don't have to, but I have to?
Wait, I did. I said there's no contradiction.
Okay, there's no contradiction in what I said.
I'm not saying it's contradictory.
Okay, but if what I said is not contradictory and what you said is not contradictory, how can that be the case since we're basically saying opposite things?
Exactly.
My claim is just the lack of contradiction, right? The first premise of the cosmological argument is a claim about the world.
Wait, you're saying that you're like almost like putting a stake in the ground by saying like, look, my statement has no contradiction, but so does mine.
Real quick, it was great talking with you again,
My statement is
Baked.
just the lack of contradiction.
Thanks, Diz. Thanks, Enrage. Thanks, Benji, man. Hope you guys have a great night. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
My claim is just that there is no contradiction.
So, what was your statement again? Because it seems like we're going in a circle now.
My statement was that I could just make anything up. Like everything that begins to exist has a cause or an explanation, whatever it is. You'll never be able to invalidate it. And I could say it's logically correct. Like what?
No, but you can validate it to a certain extent. You mean validated in the sense of like absolute?
No, what I mean is like just appealing that something that a proposition doesn't contain a logical contradiction is not really informative. When we're having like,
but that is the claim, right? An event taking place in the absence of sufficient reason.
Not any type of claim, though. It doesn't mean anything.
But it does mean something.
I could just make a statement about a metaphysical principle and say there's no logical contradiction. What does that mean?
But the claim I'm making is just the lack of contradiction. The first premise of the cosmological argument.
What is the significance of that? Okay, so I'm going to make a metaphysical.
Making a positive claim.
I'm going to make a metaphysical claim everything that exists has to have an explanation for its existence. Is there any contradiction in what I said?
No.
Okay, I'm going to make another statement. Everything that exists, nothing requires an explanation for its existence. Is there any contradiction in what I said?
No.
No. Okay, those statements are negations of each other. They're total opposite statements. But we just established, you just said there's no contradiction in either one. There's no logical neither one contains a logical, within itself, neither one contains a logical contradiction. Yet they both can't be true. They're negations of each other. So what does it establish to say, look, neither of them have a logical contradiction within them? It establishes nothing because they both can't be true. One is 100% false. The other one is 100% true. And yet both of them, within neither are there a logical contradiction. So it doesn't add anything to just point that out and be like, well, my claim is just that there's no logical contradiction.
So
that's
the claim I'm making is true by virtue of the fact that there's no contradiction. The first premise of the cosmological argument is not true by virtue of the fact that there's no contradiction.
No, there's nothing true. You don't establish the truth of the statement by just establishing that there's no logical contradiction in the statement.
Of course it is, if it's a logical claim.
It's not a logical claim.
It is.
That's the point. You're not making a claim about logic. You're making a claim about metaphysics.
Sorry, is there? But the whole point is to say that there is no contradiction.
You're not talking about mathematics or logic. You're talking about metaphysics.
And the claim is true because there's no contradiction in it.
No, metaphysical claims are not true because they don't contain non-contradictions.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem with the first premise of the cosmological argument.
Why? Forget the cosmological argument. I don't agree with the cosmological argument. Who cares? That has nothing to do with your statement. I don't care about the.
That's the point of making it.
No, I don't care about the cosmological argument. So I don't care. You've refuted it. You've won nothing. No one cares about it.
Okay. So, do you remember way back in the beginning when King Bear asked me what kind of God I deny? And one of the things I listed was the object of the cosmological argument.
Do you have a degree, a bachelor's discernible?
Yeah.
In what field?
Discord.
You specialize in social media?
Yeah, Discord.
Just Discord?
I just don't know the point of this question. You can move on from it.
I'm trying to understand your background. I've never talked to you before. I'm trying to understand what you studied in college. Is that an inappropriate question?
I studied history.
Okay. And when did you start to get interested in this subject?
A long time ago.
Okay. I'm surprised that you're not further along because you seem like an intelligent person and
so what's the problem with what I've said?
You wasted basically about 45 minutes of my time.
That's not a problem with something I've said.
Not in an offensive way, because I don't mean wasted. I don't mean to make it sound dramatic. It's not like I wasn't unhappy having the conversation.
That's not a refutation.
No progress was made. We made no progress because you're taking these positions that really don't make any sense. You're saying
how does that make sense?
The cosmological argument says that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. The universe has a cause. How are you disproving that?
I'm disputing the first premise.
Okay. But all you've established is that things don't require an explanation. So establish that something can begin to exist without a cause. Go ahead, establish it.
No, a cause is a kind of explanation, right?
No.
A cause is a reason something exists.
No. Nope.
And remember, what I mean to be talking about here is antecedent sufficient condition. I take explanation and cause to both be species of antecedent sufficient condition.
Can you provide an example of something that begins to exist without a cause?
I've already said it's mysterious cause and known cause would be phenomenal. It would be phenomenally identical.
Can you point to something, an example of an object that begins to exist without a cause?
No, and whether or not there is one isn't entailed by anything I've said.
Okay. So you have no examples. So what is your counter proof to the claim that everything requires a cause that begins to exist?
It's not logically necessary.
That's not a counter. That doesn't disprove anything.
It means it doesn't have to be true,
okay.
Right?
Okay. I'm going to disprove that X is immoral. It's not logically necessary. What does that mean? Is this really the level of argument that you use?
Well, I don't know what you just said has anything to do with what we're talking about.
What does logical possibility have to do with metaphysical claims?
It means it's not necessary that everything that comes to exist has a cause.
Metaphysical claims don't contain logical contradictions. You know that, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying there's a contradiction in the first premise.
If I claim something can come from nothing, is there a logical contradiction?
Well, it depends what that means, right? If you mean what I mean by something can appear in the absence of a sufficient reason, there's no contradiction. But if you mean nothing has causal powers, that's a contradiction.
It's not a logical contradiction.
For nothing to have causal powers?
Yeah.
Well, causal powers, I mean, I guess, again, this might be depending on what you mean by thing, but usually causal powers are something.
No. Causal powers aren't something. Where are you getting that? What's a causal power? Are you saying a causal power is a physical object?
No, well, you're just walking down the route of saying that nothing can cause something.
No, you just said a causal power is something. What is it?
Yeah.
What's a causal power? Is it a physical object?
Well, something in the sense that it's a sufficient reason for something else.
No, we're sticking with cause. What is it?
Yeah, for my purposes, it just has to be a species of sufficient condition.
No, we're staying with cause. We're not going to shift back and forth between sufficient condition and cause.
Okay, just to be clear here, you can't accuse me of using confusing words if you don't let me use my own word.
I'm trying to agree with your terminology.
And
but
you're walking down the route of arguing that nothing can cause something, right?
No, I'm saying you cannot. Your entire argument is saying, here's a metaphysical claim, and then for some reason, I don't know why you think this is anything of value to say there's no logical contradiction in this metaphysical claim about reality. And what I'm saying is that
but that's not my point.
No, that has been your entire point.
That you just said that there's no logical contradiction in the first premise of the cosmological argument?
No, you have been arguing that there's no logical contradiction in your metaphysical claim about the world. Do you disagree with that?
No. I mean, I would quibble with the word metaphysical, but no.
Okay, exactly. And that is a meaningless, what does that, I'm trying to understand why you think that there's any significance.
I've already said it. It means the first premise of the cosmological argument doesn't have to be true.
You're absurd about telling me that you're absurd.
No, you're not going to disprove the first premise of the cosmological argument by saying there's a logical contradiction. No one makes that argument.
I didn't say there was a logical contradiction in it.
Why are you talking about logical contradictions in the metaphysical claim then?
I didn't say there was one. I've repeatedly said there's no contradiction in the first premise.
Why have you been talking about logical contradictions for the past 40 minutes?
Because that's the point of my position, that there's no logical contradiction in something taking place for a reason.
About the logical contradiction about metaphysical issues that we're talking about. No one cares. No one. I don't mean that like the people in the room. I mean no one in the universe could comprehend what you're talking about.
Wait, if you don't care about the cosmological argument,
dude, stop. I don't know if if you fell down and you hit your head or if something happened to you. If you're normally like this, you're not a healthy person. And I say that
if I'm right, is it a problem for the cosmological argument?
You're not a healthy person. There's something wrong with
If I'm right, I don't know. Is this a problem for the cosmological argument?
Do you hear what I'm saying to you? I'm saying I don't think you're healthy. Like,
it's kind of useless.
You're talking right over me.
And you're just getting triggered.
No, because for 40 minutes you've been talking about that your metaphysical claims about the world don't contain logical contradictions, and it's stupid and it's dumb, and you're making me a more like dumb person.
Why?
Because it's a meaningless conversation.
So if I'm right, is it a problem for the cosmological argument?
No, it's not. Dude, please, like, I don't know what happened to you. Did something happen to you?
So, yes or no?
I'm saying out of concern
yes
for
or
your
no?
Wait, do you care that I'm not concerned about your well-being? Are you listening to what I'm saying to you?
I don't care that you're concerned about my well-being, no.
You don't care about, if I'm expressing concern about your well-being, you don't care?
No.
You think I'm going to you about a philosophical issue?
Not in the slightest.
Okay, I'm not going to keep talking to you about this when you don't care if I'm like, dude, I'm worried about you. Something's wrong with you.
Okay, so you're looking for an excuse to run?
No, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You're an idiot, for lack of better terms.
Now you're kill screening.
Stop. No, dude, stop. You're an idiot. You're being an idiot.
If I'm right, is that a problem for the cosmological argument?
Let me rephrase this. You're not an idiot. You're an intelligent person, but you're acting like an idiot.
If I'm right, is it a problem for the cosmological argument?
Wasted 45 minutes. Stop talking, dude.
If I'm right, is it a problem for the cosmological argument?
See, this is what happens with a lot of the atheists. Benjamin, if this is your friend, Benjamin, if this is your friend, you will hear from me later about breaking. This is what a lot of the atheists try to do. Is it's mod by death. They want to get muted. They want to get kicked. So
I'm just asking a very reasonable question. If I'm right, is it a problem for the cosmological argument?
Do you know do you have any social skills? How old are you?
Oh my gosh.
Do you hear what I'm saying to you? Like,
look, it's a simple question, dude. I'm trying to talk about the topic.
Do you want death
if I'm right, is the cosmological argument in trouble?
This is the technique that atheists use, right?
The answer is yes, right? It is a problem.
Okay. So I'm going to fulfill discernibles. Let's start with just server mute them. Enough. You've abused the room long enough, discernible.